Hi everyone, my name is Camila. I'm the creator of Let's Talk Miami, and today we have our final episode for the season, and we're talking about how land speculators are impacting our neighborhood. And we're talking about this through the perspective of a disability advocate, Steve Wright, which I think this is going to be a great and special episode because this perspective really isn't commonly mentioned or talked about. So I'm really excited to hear from Steve today. So without further ado, let's get started. Steve, do you mind giving us some introduction into how you got involved in becoming a disability advocate? And then let's talk about the issue that you had actually posted about on Nextdoor regarding land speculators and how they're leaving these lots abandoned and vacant, and just the issue that's creating for our neighborhoods.
Sure thing. Yeah, I lived in the neighborhood for almost 20 years. I'm an Ohioan. I guess we'll start with a disability background at Kent State, where I went for journalism school. My wife and I are both from Cleveland area, so we froze to death all the time up there, or half the year. You know, my dad was a newspaper guy. It got me interested in journalism. I think I always saw that as a way to sort of go to bat for the little guy. I certainly didn't grow up silver spoon. We were, sort of working class family in the outskirts of Cleveland. So I didn't grow up with some name where, if you gave your dad's name, you just entree into society or politics.
Right.
So, this was that was a way of giving the little guy a voice. And, certainly a lot of the different beats or different assignments I had with a large newspaper in Ohio were sort of writing for the underdog or covering government from a perspective that wasn't just, the city council is going to vote 4-1 on this zoning thing today. It was more like, is that going to impact an area? Is it going to uplift a poor neighborhood? Is it going to kick everybody out? Is it going to be halfway in between? So that's sort of half of my background as a communicator, as the little guy trying to give a big voice to folks that maybe don't always get one. And then my junior year at Kent State, I met this unbelievable woman, Heidi Johnson. Now she's Heidi Johnson Wright, been my companion for more than a third of a century, wife for 32 years, put up with ungodly misery from me because I'm a handful. So, she's a saint like 90 different ways. And that's not joking, but no, she's just this unbelievably strong, beautiful woman that looks like she's 30 and, we're both in our mid 50s, if we can say, give that age. But she uses a wheelchair for mobility. She has since she was 10 or 12 years old. So she was certainly using a power motorized wheelchair when we met in college. Obviously not every gal does that. And obviously there's some folks that might have a bias or prejudice, if you will, that, why am I not getting a person that can jump the tennis net or run a mile with me or something? But maybe because I've always been sort of the outsider, I saw the big picture. And the newspaper never had a disability beat, but, obviously when you were the one person there that had a direct family member that saw the world through the vision of a person with disability, if there was a protest or there was an issue, or even if somebody just said, hey, it's a blue sky day, write about what you want, I would do disability oriented stories, and I would try to make it very progressive, but saying, please treat my wife, treat everybody like a real person, no more than act like somebody 6'6" is crazy or weird, or you should cross the other side of the sidewalk when you see them walking towards you. So as things progressed, we got tired of the, I think I aforementioned frigid winters. And one time my wife truly did slide on ice at a strip mall, in her chair. I think it was a manual chair. I was pushing her and she fell and broke her leg. And there's a million different reasons, but we sort of said, this idea of the snow piled yay high in the accessible parking space for the van or whatever, maybe we had to try somewhere warm. And we tried the most interesting, colorful place on earth, right? I think about the only thing Miami has in common with Ohio is the same time of day or something. Let's face it, we're very different. Culturally explosive. And
you actually ended up in Shenandoah, which is,
Yeah.
how did you pick that one?
We were mid-30s and she had just gotten 10 years with a job. So it's like whatever she vested to, get some sort of benefit when she turned 65. And, we sort of said, we had come here a few times, like everybody, we left a cruise port or something, or checked out South Beach and when the Art Deco district was all going on all fours. And, we said, hey, what if your vacation place became your home place, which is obviously very, very different. But yeah, we rented a semi-wheelchair accessible place in Hollywood and went looking. And, we lived in a suburb in Ohio that was, I guess, sort of like a Coral Gables or something, where everything was manicured and, whatever, picket fences, blah, blah, blah. But we looked at a lot of core neighborhoods. We wanted to be part of the urban thing. If my wife's wheelchair van broke down, we wanted to be 5 blocks from a good bus route. So yeah, we started looking at areas that we knew would be rough around the edges. In 2002, we bought a kind of beat up house in Little Havana, and slowly with permits, made it wheelchair accessible for my wife and shored up. It's a 1925 house, so it certainly needed some work.
And that's the beautiful part of our neighborhood. It's one of the few neighborhoods that I think are left in Miami where it still is a connection to what Miami was.
Yes.
and being able to see the development that we've been able to see in Brickell, in downtown. And even in our own neighborhood, it's great to have this development, but for the past few years, this development has been out of control. When I saw your post on Nextdoor about what was happening in your neighborhood, I guess I was shocked at the fact that there's not anything that's being done from our government, and it's just being allowed. So do you mind talking about exactly, so that we're not, alluding to something, just talk about what happened and what it is that you're reporting on.
Correct. And again, anyone that lives in Shenandoah has been through it. I mean, let's face it, there's pluses. You can get a mini Coral Gables looking house for, maybe up half or 2/3 of the price of the Gables. The diversity of our area is a great asset. And I like that there's little apartment buildings on the end of our streets. So there's power there. Again, it's that kind of, where do you draw the line? And shortly after we moved here, there was a lady that moved out, and her son, I think, got out of jail, and he was dealing drugs and having parties all night. So, we had rough around the edges from the start, and thankfully she finally sold the house, and we got a retired architect that cleaned up the home immediately south of us. And these are small lots. So yeah, if somebody's blasting a stereo or howling at the moon, you certainly hear it, because they're like 5 feet away from your door. But no, I just, again, so like I said, I don't mind rough around the edges. To be honest, if an old lady 4 doors down is doing a home-based business that probably technically needs some zoning, but if she's not having 8 cars parked in the lawn and, she's starting at 10 a.m. and stopping at 4, who am I to say? That might help her pay her taxes and fixing her roof. So again, I think I'm a live and let live person, but over time, there was a house 3 doors down to the east of us. It was just an immaculate house, and I believe the old man died, and maybe there was a fight among the kids that inherited or whatever. But it's been empty for years. There's been squatters. There's been a mini fire. There's just trash dumped, that looks like hell. And then there was a house on 14th Street, which I'm on Southwest 13. So again, we're talking 75 feet behind me. It became real careworn, and it had some sort of almost like illegal motorcycle repair body shop. And then that finally got run out, and they demoed it. And it probably was such a bad house that it needed to be knocked down, and they grassed it, and then nothing happened. And now it looks like a jungle, which jungles are beautiful if they're not next to homes and collecting, mattresses and garbage bags and, whatever. There could be a half of a body in a bag in there for all we know. And then the home next to us, it's not going to be on the top of Architectural or the cover story of Architectural Digest. It's a very standard looking, I don't know what, maybe 50s home. It's a single story. Who knows, maybe the kitchen had not been updated in 60 years, or, maybe it was a little shabby, but it was affordable. We had 2 elderly couples. I think both of them were in there for before us. So when you think, a renter for 20 years, that's a pretty doggone good renter. And,
right. A stable rent.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, and just there was up on a for sale sign. So you thought, oh, wow, a new person will probably kick them out. And sure enough, they did, which I suppose is you're right. For all I know, maybe they're month to month. But, it's just, these very stable people. And we started seeing stuff dragged to the curb. And I thought, okay, again, they probably need permits. But, if they're taking out an old fridge, or maybe there was some toilet that was sagging. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be the rules weenie and scold them for everything. Maybe
Right.
they're mainly doing maintenance. Pretty soon there was a dumpster, and I thought, wait a minute, this is going beyond. And we called the 311 and did all the stuff. And I don't know if they cited him or not. At that time, I was traveling a lot for my consulting, so I couldn't keep an eye on all the time. And pretty soon there's another dumpster, and then there was some kind of sticker on the door. And then I talked to a building guy that I caught in the outside, and he's like, yeah, they've all been demolished inside with no permits whatsoever. And, he's like, it's an unsafe structure. It's probably going to be raised. And I thought, well, again, this kind of gets to the core of what we're talking about is they went in illegally or, against code. They, again, if you want to move your toilet or 2 inches over or retile the bathroom, far be it from me to be a stickler for every city hoop and rule. But, when you completely demo, you're supposed to do it by permit. The person that owns it happens to be a prominent architect, which it sort of galled me that, if you've gone through the training and have the gift of design, why would you break something that's not, and of course, he sleeps in Pinecrest in $1 million house, so easy to trash. He doesn't see the eyesore or the noise or the horribleness or know that the whole neighborhood will be cramped up. And so, long thing short, the city cited it. They knocked out the windows. The city had some contractor put up boards. The boards have graffiti, and now, whatever. My fumigator, my Amazon delivery, anybody that comes to the home looks at it and says, "Oh my God, that looks like hell." Or they might even say a word that's 4 letters that starts with S. And you feel. Again, I don't expect Beverly Hills, but you feel terrible.
Yeah.
It's like you almost slump. Like why? And we paid off our house in 15 years. We were whatever good enough to, really, we want to be stakeholders. This isn't some fix up the house, sell it, and move to the Grove kind of thing. And it was just
You put out the issue of the eyesore, and maybe people might say, oh, well, that's superficial and not valid. But I want to paint the picture of what Shenandoah is. It's a working class neighborhood. So these aren't rich people usually. It's people that are usually middle class. They work hard.
I mean,
to maintain their home. You see someone next door. Yeah, you see someone next door, and like how you mentioned, it used to be occupied by an elderly couple that didn't really maintain the house, but
they had affordable, and I don't mean affordable like like a project in the sky or a tombstone in the sky. It was the perfect thing. Yeah, it was a mix of incomes. It's a mix of ethnicities. It's a mix of, they worked blue collar jobs. My wife and I happened to work office jobs or what have you. But no, that was just that perfect tapestry. It's not like it changed overnight and it was South Beach and everything cost $1 million or whatever. But yeah, it's just, I probably got a few Twitter flames of people saying, boo-hoo, you don't look at a perfect, house with shutters on or something, poor baby. And it's like, I hear you, but, it just, my neighbors, they've been there about 40 years. He was a proud public servant. He was a day bus driver for years. They were both born in Cuba. The wife was like a treasurer for schools, and just, they're the American dream, they raise their family, their kids are, and then the lady, I was talking with her yesterday, she saw something on her, whatever, like a Ring camera. And I think she saw somebody dumping tires again. And, I think she was with her, whatever, in-laws in Tampa or something. And she kind of, called me to, hey, what did you see, Steve? And she, we had this baby conversation, which was exactly what you're saying is that, when something's abandoned and say there's a single mom that put everything together to either rent or maybe buy a beat up house and try to fix it up, or, there's a young family starting out and, they know the kids are going to cost a small fortune just to raise. So, they're going to use their grub stake to buy a little house that's not as sexy of a neighborhood as the Gables or the Grove or what have you. And say they're getting taken through and they say, wow, there's already a beat up house 2 doors down. There's a bunch of mattresses piled up and here's something boarded that's graffitied. And, they're going to say, no, you know what, maybe I'll get a 1-bedroom in the Grove or somewhere that I perceive is nicer. And then lo and behold, who rents? It may be the person that's a drug dealer, or I think there was that broken windows theory book written like 30 some years ago that, trash begets trash. And if it's on the upswing, and again, I mean upswing by just fixing up kind of a beat up house and cleaning it up. I don't mean knocking down a whole block and building a tower. It's just that, again, I I'm a nerd. I at the paper in Ohio, I kind of had the urban affairs, growth and development beat. And then when I came here, I worked for an elected official being sort of their urban policy guru for almost a decade. And now I help people market their ideas or go after the public tenders and RFPs to do urban design plans. So I'm kind of a nerd with that. And it's proven that, slow incremental redevelopment is best. Can there be a vacant lot that gets a brand new thing on it? Of course. I'm not saying put a magic bubble over and just freeze us, in circa 2005 and nothing shall change. Of course, we live in a capitalist country,
Right.
If you buy something, you're allowed to get your return, but just
Right.
a return with limits, not just this unbridled, again, obviously a lot of people in the Grove have been upset with what they call those white boxes, where they're like the maximum 35 feet tall and they're like 3 foot from the lot line. And, if you live in something that's single story homes, it looks like it's spying on you or something, or it just, it crushes your sense of human scale.
Right.
So,
But at the end of the day, like I had mentioned, I'm not against development.
same here.
I think it's great. And the issue here isn't really having a vacant lot. The issue here is having an owner buy up these homes, these lands, because they are affordable, and then just leaving them abandoned without any care for the neighborhood, when we could be using that same lot in a much better way. We could have affordable housing, and you had mentioned even creating housing that's available for people with disabilities. So do you want to talk about that? Like, really, what's the potential that these lots have?
Correct. I consider myself a progressive person. I don't know, maybe tolerance the word or whatever. But as I said, when I buy in an urban area, I don't expect, oh, wow, everybody's going to look like me and we're all going to double our income in 3 years. And we're going to turn whatever, we're going to impose the scripted gables on Shenandoah. Not at all. I mean, Shenandoah is kind of famous for having a lot of assisted living facilities. Some are ran very poorly and are a detriment. Some are ran well. I don't care if the person's in a halfway house and did 10 years time. If they've paid their debt to society and they're ready to re-enter and be productive, I can tolerate that. I mean, we all need to do our fair share of integrating all different people. So again, it doesn't need to be this perfect picket fence world, but I mean, people smarter than me have researched and written stories where I believe it's almost half of Miami-Dade County, or certainly the city of Miami, pays 50% of its gross income on housing, whether they are over their head in something they bought or just renting. Let's face it, we have a lot of jobs that pay minimum wage or just above. And if you have a kid or two, or, maybe grandma's sick and moves in, how do you make $9 an hour and pay for a $1,200 single bedroom? And or how do you pay for $1,800 for a little 2-1? That's just, do the math. It's not sustainable. So we need to create things. And maybe I'm just enough of an idealist that I really think if you give somebody a shot in the arm, maybe they'll graduate out of the thing that pays half their rent for them or something into being a renter owner. Let's face it, there are some people that are always going to kind of mess up their lives no matter how much help, but I tend to think most people will. I mean, look at Miami. Our wealth is immigrants. We have had, let's face it, a lot of Cubans were upper middle class and came here and parked cars at the Fontainebleau until they got recertified as a physician or a dentist or what have you. So I think we've pretty much proven that if you give someone a landing, if we give someone a landing spot and give them a chance, they will progress towards or like my neighbor, he made a nice union wage as a bus driver, he fed his family and then some, So again, I want to support that. So why, even if the rare lots are actually just grassed and cut, which again, maybe it looks like a baby park that you can't walk on because it's private property, and I can live with that, but why not put a little triple or a double on that? I would much rather have scattered site affordable housing than those things are sort of the projects where it's like the 8 or 12 story and it kind of looks like a tombstone in the sky, and obviously certain projects have gotten a reputation for getting beat up, sort of before their time. But if you take away someone, certainly that I've written about this nationally, obviously that America has a history of African American neighborhoods, instead of maybe giving some small grants to fix up, they knocked down all the houses, put somebody in a little concrete box in the sky, and wondered why they didn't love it. Well, you couldn't congregate on a porch. You didn't have, you move neighbors to 6 different buildings, maybe 7 zip codes apart. And even if it was well intended, which I don't know if it was, you kind of busted the community. So big surprise that it's not close knit, or there's no feeling of ownership. That's a societal thing, not a what group it was done to thing. And I just, why not reintegrate that? Again, Shenandoah, as we both said, it's very diverse. I guess there's a few houses that, maybe people have added on with their permits and made it nice. And, maybe it's a little ritzier than maybe you and I could afford, but it's just, it has that range. So
Yeah.
why not have some, and again, you could have affordable for sale ones where, maybe there's some down payment assistance or something, or, or maybe, and again, I would much rather pay for that than to put someone into jail or to, to whatever. Yeah, we should have drug programs, but, why not give the single mom a boost and a place for her kids to sleep at night safely, and no gun cracking, or no, are we going to get kicked out by the landlord every other month because we didn't quite make rent, and maybe they fall into despair and get a substance issue. I'm guessing a little boost for their housing was a heck of a lot cheaper, even if you're just a dollars and cents bottom liner and not socially conscious, than spending to fix
I was gonna say that if maybe the fact that 60% of Miami-Dade can't afford our housing, if that argument doesn't appeal to you, then think about just local economics. Here in Miami, our government is mainly funded, most of the revenues are funded from property taxes.
You are correct.
And so if you have these kind of vacant lots that are attracting homelessness, just garbage, well, you're reducing the property values around the house. It's going to happen. So you're reducing the property tax that is coming into the city.
You make such a perfect point. And again, how there's the you can appeal stuff to the property appraiser, which we never have. But yeah, you would almost tip the hand of someone like me, rather than writing a letter or trying to get on TV to shine a light on the issues. Yeah, maybe I go down to the property appraiser and say, hey, my house isn't worth X amount. Look at all this crap, downgrade it by 80%. Well, that's a 20% cut in the taxes that my wife and I pay. So yeah, you make up, again, to me, patrolling, not having something take 2.5 years to do the code enforcement, that you could be the most hardline conservative that sees the world's whatever in dollars and cents and revenue, and not raising taxes. Or you could be the most liberal person that would, whatever, hug the homeless person and give them a room in your spare bedroom or what have you. You could be, this touches all spectrums. So again, I know right now we're obviously after presidential, we're in extremely, I identify as this and everybody else is horrible.
Extremely
or vice
divisive.
Versa. This doesn't have an R or a D or this doesn't really have an ideology to it. It's just flat out being decent. And I had a conversation with Esteban Ferrero, that's the chief of staff for Commissioner Reyes. And Commissioner Reyes has good constituent services. He's certainly, he has a presence in the neighborhood. So I'm certainly not here to knock him. But, when we talked, they said, well, the people have property rights and it just takes forever to enforce on these. And I said, well, okay, obviously with crimes, there's a huge range, whatever. You steal a loaf of bread, maybe you get probation or something. Obviously you do a violent crime, you're going away because you've proven you're not safe to walk among us. So why couldn't you have a 2-tiered system with this, where just very basically, a house is shabby, grandma's living in there or what have you. So you get some federal CDBG money, or you go to a very wealthy condo king and say, hey, here's a tax write-off, donate some money, or have your maintenance crews for your condos go by. So, abuela who maybe is really living paycheck to paycheck, and she can barely, it's almost like, do I buy a can of soup or do I pay my taxes? Have someone come in and fix the window that's just boarded up, or patch her roof, or, maybe some church would come in every other week and cut her grass in the rainy season. So, you've done nothing to kick grandma or struggling young family or what have you out of their home. But when it's a speculator, when you look at the folio and the person lives in Pasadena, Broward, Kendall, wherever, they're not sleeping next to the mess they created, then there's a more aggressive track because, yes, that person has rights, but you're not enforcing against a human, you're enforcing against an LLC that's there to double their money. Responsible development, I am totally for it. Some of my clients do urban infill and historic preservation and rehab of old buildings. And, so, it'd be kind of disingenuous for me to say slam the brakes on all development and just, whatever, let it fall into the sea. So, hey, if somebody's responsible, they buy the old thing, put in a new stove, maybe a nice bath, I don't know, whatever, put in impact windows so it's noise reduction. And, hey, if they used to rent for $1,200 and they can get $1,500, that's great. God bless them. They cleaned it up. They're not trying to get 3,000, whatever. If they have a triple, that's 4,500 a month that they're getting for the 1,500. They're I bet you anything they're making their 10% or whatever their pro forma says. So that's great. But just the city has to find, I also told one of our elected officials, I said, when a big developer wants to do some gigantic condo on Brickell or Upper East Side or whatever, or some mixed use super duper billionaire building, you'll give them 15 variances, 6 waivers, you'll send the lobbying team to Tallahassee to change some law or give them some, to let them build, super max, whatever. Instead of it being whatever, 400 a square foot, they can sell it for 1,200 a square foot. You will bend over backwards for that. If property laws are something that comes out of Tallahassee, whatever, or the code thing is something that's out of their hands, then send the lobbying team up there and say, hey, we're geniuses. We got track A to protect Abuela. We got track B to, let's not say punish, let's say motivate, Yeah. If tomorrow you and I, if you and I became such friends and we came into 50 grand and we bought some little shack, it's like if we neglected it because we were waiting to hit the lotto to finish the rest, then it would be a great motivation to say, hey, sell it to somebody who gives a rat's butt, put it into our rental program, or do your darn job and finish the fix up you started. I mean, that's
and
that's
I
an
think
incentive.
and I think that's a great point that you bring up, that our local government will literally bend over backwards for a developer. But when it comes to a private individual property owner, it's like, well, now we have to go through the whole bureaucracy that an LLC doesn't have to. They just get to cut. It seems like the red tape has been created for the private individual property owner, and it's not being enforced on these companies that are actually really the ones that are the reason why we have all of this need for permits and ordinances are because of these companies, and we are the ones that are now being hindered by it.
We are kindred spirits for life, my new friend. No, you hit the head again. Like I said, if somebody dots their I's, let's face it, we are Miami. It seems like half of everybody that's a millionaire wants to have their second or third home here. It starts to skew things and drives up property prices, but you cannot stop that. So let's face it, Brickell is tall. So the last lot, or if there's a 3-story old bank building and somebody bought it and wants to build a 50-story or whatever you're allowed, I get it. That doesn't make Super Condo LLC 1, 2, 3. That doesn't make them evil. That's what they do, and they're employing their workers. And so, but again, it's like you said, why give them 100 breaks and whatever. Jose, the guy 4 doors down, goes to try to legalize something or says, hey, this is weird. I think this used to be a porch and somebody built it in way before me. Maybe I need to get, and they got to jump through 19 hoops and the inspector doesn't show up. And, they come down on them with some, $100 a minute. No, I'm kidding, whatever, $500 a day fine. And they're ready to panic. And again, that's,
Well, actually, one of the things that I truly dislike about our city is the fact that we have a tree trust fund that protects trees. And our family, if you've heard of our story, what we had to go through because of a tree that we removed without a permit, the huge issue that we had, and we found out that there was such a thing as a tree trust fund. But we have a tree trust fund that protects trees, but we won't have a fund that, like how you mentioned, will help the elderly that is disabled, isn't able to work, and they have this home that they probably own because they've lived there their whole life, but it's gone down in its maintenance, so it's kind of abandoned, and there's no help for those people. Those people that have contributed and are still contributing to property taxes. There's no help for them, but we do have something that's going to protect trees. So don't tell me, oh well, this isn't this is capitalism and we don't want regulations, because if we're going to work with that, then we can't be having something that's protecting the environment while forgetting about the people that live in this environment.
Correct. And let's face it, we're both educated, reasonable people. Look, we both know there's not a magic money tree. Again, when I worked for an elected official, sometimes someone would come with all these ideas and you'd say, I hear you, but the minute the door closes with you, whatever, you're the whatever, you're the scooters, you're the paint, let's say now you're the paint the houses red person. Well, my next meeting's the paint them green, and the one after that's the paint them blue, and then there's the paint them gold. And I don't have I don't have half the money to get halfway to purple. So where's the money tree? So I understand it's very easy to sit on the sidelines and say, shouldn't there be? But again, you walk before you crawl, or I'm sorry, you crawl before you walk, before you run. So you can baby step this. And I think I earlier mentioned, maybe a condo king. And I'm sure if I were a billionaire, there's probably every other piece of mail is somebody with a very legitimate hard luck story that wants me to contribute. So you can't do everything. But again, one of the things when I worked within government, and now when I go maybe be a little bit of a thorn in the side to them, is I say, why be reactive? We can be proactive. All you folks, you tweet out your pictures at the food giveaway, you take credit for the cleanup of the coyote or what have you. It's like, you want to get on the New York Times, you want to get on the nightly news and tout Miami and how you're a part of, the new face of this wonderful place. It's like, do something innovative. Minding the store never got anybody on the evening news or the CBS Sunday morning show where it's 10 minutes about, wow, look how wonderful, this person stuck their neck out and tried something and look how good it is for the people, so be innovative. There is federal HUD money. Yeah, like you said, I am a tree hugger, but, maybe rather than going for blood over a tree or, making an easy enough pathway to replace it and create a fund for humans. I just, part of the argument for building all these gigantic buildings and malls, what have you, is that's your new tax base. So that must be, unless I'm being lied to, that must be creating an increment to where, if 1 year, 20% of the vacant lots were built with accessible housing. And again, you kindly helped me segue into the thing I started with. I do marketing. I am still a journalist. I write for a lot of planning and governing and urban design magazines. And not just my research. I mean, federal numbers that were created under Democratic and Republican administrations have said that, less than 1% of all housing is move-in ready for a wheelchair user. So even when you add in like the government funded things that have to be somewhat accessible, or maybe a large apartment building where they built a few units accessible, or even a little 3-story infill thing near the Marlins Park that's got a ground floor, it's still 1%. I mean, so you look at any minority group, economically or what have you, I don't think there's an immigrant or a person of color that can't afford or access less than 1% of housing. So folks with disabilities have the crappiest part of the stick by any measure. And, no, I'm not going to say, hey, you and your brand new house have to put an elevator inside and go broke, or you have to put a perfect ramp that costs you $50,000 with 6 turns on it and jewels on the end. No, we have individual rights, but it got to be a middle ground. When we bought an aircraft aluminum ramp to get my wife into our Shenandoah house that's thankfully a bit up off the ground, so when the sea level rise gets us, maybe we'll survive. I mean, it cost a small fortune because we're one person, right? We all know economy of scale.
Right.
If you bid out buying 1,000 ramps, you're probably going to get them at 70% of what Steve and I paid. So, and again, maybe it takes 3 years to deploy them, but you're going to be innovative. And what is innovative? You get on even the local news or you get on the national broadcast, that's when the Ford Foundation or any one of these hundreds of, billion capitalized things that do stuff like that, they're going to take note. So when you write your grant application, you're not just Joe Schmo with an idea and a good smile on your face. You have a track record. And I've helped people write winning grants. So again, I'm no expert, but that tends to be. So, if you could say, hey, we did 12 ramps in Allapattah on rental housing. So, the landlord didn't look at the ADA as an onerous thing or something that he or she was afraid of. It got them tenants overnight. And it got, trust me, as a spouse of a person with disability, if you give me a fair rent, even if it goes up $50 every other year or whatever the fair progression is on a little place, and it has a ramp and maybe it's got a little walk-in shower, you had to replace the tub because it was caving in anyway. Trust me,
Right.
we're never, unless we scratch off a lotto win, we're never leaving because
It's
by
hard to
virtue.
find.
It's so hard to find. And I mean, I'm not a landlord, but were I one, I'm pretty sure not having to like advertise and repaint and find new people or maybe go 6 months with it empty. I'm guessing loyal people that might even say like, hey, we want to build we want to change the kitchen a little bit to more accessible. We'll pay it for it out of pocket. Will you allow it? I'm pretty much guessing any landlord would, probably like stand on their head for an hour to get that. So why not, and wouldn't it be wonderful if Francis Suarez got up there at the state of the city? And of course, there's going to be things about number of condos or units made or tax base grown, but why not say, hey, in Alapata, we did 12. In Little Haiti, we got 13. And, in East Little Havana, we got 20. We got almost 100 this year. Next year, we think we can do more than that because the Getty Foundation or the whomever, some bazillionaire, they're going to give us 20 million of a pilot program or like that. The house next to me, since it's basically gutted, you could maybe knock out the wall that allows a nice tight walk-in shower. I mean, I'm talking to you from a place that's 1,200 square feet. It's not some 8-bedroom manse. It's got 1 bathroom. We created a very compact, tight walk-in roll-in shower for my wife. It works just fine. It's got grab bars. I'm a dummy. I drew the thing on the back of some, some notebook paper and got somebody that knew what they were doing to put it in. So we didn't have to go borrow money from the Rockefellers to do it. So, it's
right.
just.
And talking about innovative, I'm wondering what ideas would you have of enforcing speculators to maintain or maintain their lots, or even better would be to discourage long-term speculators that are just holding on to these abandoned lots?
Correct. Perfect point. Obviously, we sort of addressed the one where, again, I don't want to be draconian, but to me, rather than the homeowners having to go complain or call the city manager's office and code it, to me, like 12 months time, if something is still abandoned, and again, it's not owner occupied. So it's clearly, it's Jim and Jose LLC. For all I know, is in Canada or doesn't even live in this. I think 12 months time is enough to fix it up. And then maybe it goes to auction and just, whatever, if they bought it for 300 and it goes auction for 275, they get the 275 back. And again, I'm guessing that if the auction is January 1st and it's late October, I bet you my butt's going to be out there fixing it up because, I might $2,500 worth of fix up or even 12,000 worth of fix up is better than losing my 25,000. To me, rapidly putting something back out onto the market when it's just a speculation you're not kicking a boiler to the curb. You're not kicking, maybe some formerly homeless fellow that, rebuilt his life and is just starting out and got behind on the rent. You're not doing it. It's vacant. An empty lot is an empty lot that's just breeding trash.
And so I have a question for you. When you're talking about this kind of auction, are you talking about just an empty lot that is well manicured, or are you talking about that empty lot that's just abandoned, that's attracting trash?
Yeah, anything that's poorly maintained. And obviously we don't have the time to get into how to define it. But, again, if somebody went to Southwest 14th Street in the 2300 block right now, it's like about 14 months ago, it was grass. And again, it almost just looked like a park with a fence around it. I guess if somebody keeps, if somebody brings, the mower in every 12 days in rainy season or whatever's right, I don't have a problem with it.
Right.
But, when it's documented, when it's about the 8th time I see mattresses or I see a, de facto fire pit or human waste or, 1,600 black garbage.
That has to go.
You're done. Yeah.
Yeah.
And from when I work with the city, and maybe it's changed, but, even when it was a speculator, again, it wasn't grandma, it wasn't the poor family that, lost their job because of COVID or something, when it was a speculator, they would run up all these fines. And when I'd call, they'd say, hey, they're going to get hammered for this. And then I'd read, as soon as they did something, they said, oh, poor me, somebody's crapped up my house, even though it was them illegally on the weekends tearing it apart. I think, go to a special master, and they'd waive it all to like an $800 fine. Well, Jesus, what's the point of that? Like I say, right. I'm not saying get blood, but if you're a speculator, if they saw in the Miami Today or the Herald or the Nuevo Herald or the Audio, if they saw, wow, this guy got whacked for 20 grand because he crapped up the neighborhood or he didn't give a rat's butt, I bet you they'd start saying, we don't want to do that. Get that crew out there, or don't don't demolish the thing illegally. I mean, again, my understanding is, this is sort of like the big news for you, supposedly the guy next door has just filed permits to rehab the house within its current envelope. So I won't be looking at the 40-foot, 3-inch lot line white box or something. But why the hell did he do it in the first place? He probably could have kept his renters, or, maybe he relocated one, do one side with the rehab, during daylight hours, so it's not too disruptive. Fix it up, clean it up. Yeah, you may get new people because maybe the rent goes up $400 because it's all nicer. Then give the people the next door the option, hey, can you afford more money for a really beautiful, perfect place? Then I'll move you back to the left side while I do your right. That's not anti-development. The dude can make his, he could make his whatever. If he bought for $230 and put 20 into it, he can make his $250 in no time at all. But it's incremental.
And I think, just to close off this episode, I think the whole point of this is to say, what we're talking about is just quality of life, really. At the end of the day, it's a quality life of our residents in our community. And it's just saying, hey, hold people accountable just as you hold us accountable. Like we're not asking for anything crazy. We're just saying, hey, you know what? This is creating cost to us because we're having to send out a code compliance. We're losing revenues because property values are going down. It's a safety and health issue because it is attracting crime. And it's just saying, hey, you know what? We have this major issue, an affordable housing crisis in our community, where we're tired, honestly, of seeing that locals are just being bought out of where they were born, where they were raised, where they're working, and at the same time, you have these people that are just don't care. Really, they don't care.
No.
And it's just, we're saying, you know what? Like, we can use this to tackle this huge crisis. That's all I'm saying.
You said it more succinctly and brilliant, and I'm supposed to be the communicator word, dude. But no, it's just fair play. It's just decency. It's just having some pride in. I'm not here to shame anybody. I don't want to embarrass. I wanted somebody put a comment on one of my social media posts in, well, they're all corrupt, don't you know? And I'm like, no, I'm not saying that 123 LLC is bribing the person to leave their property crap. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, hey, mix in a couple more of your people going out and sending, memos to the manager to get this fixed, or, calling the city attorney to say, hey, 15 months is too long a time. One of the excuses with why these things aren't being enforced is they said that the code enforcement hasn't met for like 7 months because of COVID, which maybe I'm the dummy. I'm certainly not the brightest bulb you'll ever meet, but our city commission within like a couple of weeks started meeting via Zoom. I mean, they passed like $1 billion budget. They've passed zonings that are going to dramatically change areas. They hired a new city manager. I mean, that's kind of the big leagues, right? I mean, they're making, maybe there was some executive order for the governor I'm not aware of, but if the big boys, if they can make these life-changing, spend half of our money things, and hopefully those were all good decisions, then I'm pretty sure a lower board could learn how to click on the Zoom and get connected. And if some neighbor wants to testify that it's a crap hole, they could probably, even a dummy like me, you baby step me onto my Zoom, we could click on our little phone. And if there's an attorney for the LLC saying, oh, you don't understand, they've, it's been raining locusts and they need 10 more months, they could Zoom in and talk, right? But why couldn't the lower board? Why did it suspend itself for more than half a year? I mean, if you can pass a budget that spends all my tax money, I think you could have a hearing to say, look, put up or shut up, fix up your thing or sell it to somebody that's capable. And I know, government lives by cliche. I kind of hate the win-win-win, but it's like, if you remove the eyesore and maybe it becomes affordable or even attainable housing, again, it doesn't all have to be struggling, whatever, just something with middle-class housing that has a little bit of government money to put it over the top. I don't need the Rockefellers or Bill Gates II here. I just want people that care and feel like they're part of the community. They could have, by the time they do the down payment or first and last month's rent, they could have $10 to their name. You want to find an elitist, you can find somebody that looks very different than me. It's just decency, fair play, and again,
and accountability.
And I'm guessing, like whatever, if all of a sudden there's so much illegal dumping, say, well, we're going to hire 10 cops on overtime. If you see what a union cop earns per hour, and then you do that times 1.5, it's a hell of a lot cheaper to put that property back in play and put someone inside of it that's decent than to pay time and a half to a whatever, a $40 an hour veteran cop. Nothing against the cops, but
Yeah, no, it's just the
again,
economics. Yeah,
spend it wisely.
exactly.
I'm not asking you to paint my house and put a gold-plated door knocker on it. It's quite the opposite. Just keep it diverse, keep it mixed income.
Well, I think that's a great way to wrap up our conversation. And I want to thank you so much for your time and really for sharing what's going on, because with COVID, a lot of people have just kind of gone inside into their homes and, I'm just going to mind my own business. But despite everything that's going on, life is still going on, and we need to be there for one another and talking about things that matter. So I want to thank you for that.
You're more than welcome. Maybe ask my poor suffering wife, the things that I love, sometimes I might be the most critical of, so yeah, I love my Miami. I love all the stories I love my diverse neighbors that have embraced me. So yeah, I'm gonna put out a few tweets or knock on a few doors and advocate it, because if you love something, it's worth, it's worth beating the bushes for. Yeah. We both, we love it, and we expect the best of it.
I agree. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, what a great way to end our season 1 of Let's Talk Miami with our conversation with Steve. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. And if you're still looking to support our show, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Miami Talks Politics. And follow and subscribe on our podcast or YouTube channel, Let's Talk Miami. And give us some ratings, some thumbs up, and let us know, give us your feedback. Let us know what you think on the comments. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you all next year in season 2. See you next time. Bye.